pattern, according to Cambridge English Dictionary, is a particular way in which something is done, is organized, or it happens. In many countries of the world, individuals or groups are found guilty of abusing human rights and they get punished. While there are countries, especially the occupying powers, who violate human rights as a state policy. Indian forces in occupied Jammu and Kashmir are forces of occupation who are equipped with sophisticated weapons and are also provided with an umbrella of legislation like Armed Forces Special Powers Act that grants the military wide powers to arrest, shoot to kill, occupy or destroy property. They are answerable to none. This makes these violations not mere violations, but systematic, widespread, and crimes against humanity. यानी एक फर्द अगर ये काम करता है, अब्यूज करता है, उसको सजा मिलती है, लेकिन एक स्टेट जब अपनी पॉलिसी ये बनाए कि आपको लोगों को किल करना है, तो ये संगीन जुर्म है, ये वॉर क्राइम है। International Commission of Jurists reported in 1995 that problem arises not only from unauthorized misconduct, but from powers and immunities given to authorities by the law of India, which must be dismantled. Human rights violations and their pattern was discussed by various human rights organizations in their published reports. Human Rights Watch Asia, in its 1993 report, was categoric regarding gross violation of human rights in India by Indian Army and state-sponsored militants, which Human Rights Watch described as India's secret army in Kashmir. OIC, right from its inception, as President Azad Jammu Kashmir very rightly pointed out, they raised voice against human rights violations in Kashmir, and their independent permanent human rights commission released a report in 2017. Despite all these things, people of Jammu and Kashmir continue to suffer, and the suffering seemed to go unnoticed. Well, then came the report of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, released on 14 June 2018, which is an indictment against India on the basis of impunity, khuli chhoot, lack of access to justice, excessive use of force by Indian forces, civilian killings near armed encounter sites. Armed encounter है हिंदुस्तानी फौज और मुजाहिदीन के दरमियान, लेकिन अब अगर वहाँ पे सिविलियंस आ जाते हैं, उनको निशाना बनाना, use of pellet firing shotgun, which has blinded so many, especially our children and our daughters. This report also sheds light on the cases of torture, involuntary disappearances, mass graves, violation of the right to health, restrictions on the right to assembly and freedom of expression, reprisals against human rights defenders, restrictions on journalists, sexual violence, and ban on the publication of newspapers. The UN report has not only identified the pattern, but has also recommended, inter alia, 1. Urgent repeal of Armed Forces Special Powers Act, this lawless law or the draconian law, and 2. To positively respond to establishment of an international commission of inquiry, and 3. To fully respect the right of self-determination of the people of Kashmir as protected under international law. The violation of human rights by Indian forces are well documented from decades, but the UN report has finally vindicated the stance of those individuals, NGOs, and countries who spoke against Indian tyranny and crimes against humanity, while India tried to hide behind the smoke screen of sovereignty and was playing with the sensitivities of the West by creating a bogey of fundamentalism and terrorism to hide its own state terrorism. In the view of IPHRC, the OIC Human Rights Commission, the contents of UN report will persuade the Indian government to come out of its persistent denial of the human rights of Kashmiri people, and will also galvanize international efforts to bring an end to the persistent human rights violations as part of a comprehensive and everlasting solution guaranteeing to Kashmiris their right to self-determination.
Thank you, sir.
All parties' Hurriyat Conference is of firm belief that to break the cycle of violence, the root cause has to be addressed. Otherwise, we'll be addressing the symptoms, but not the root cause. People of Jammu and Kashmir are occupied and besieged by an occupier and aggressor, India. Kashmiris have an inalienable right to exercise their right to self-determination, which can neither lapse with the passage of time, nor can it be curbed and extinguished by the use of Indian brute force. In the words of new UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, have a very strong message for those who want the humanitarian crisis in Jammu Kashmir to come to an end. She said, "Our recent report on the human rights situation has not been followed up with meaningful improvements or even open and serious discussions on how the grave issues raised could be addressed. The people of Kashmir have exactly the same rights to justice and dignity as people of all over the world, and we urge the authorities to respect them." Even at the United Nations, it is strongly felt that decisions made fall short of action because of patterns of non-compliance, non-implementation, and non-cooperation. We hope and pray that this report does not gather dust, but becomes instrumental in guaranteeing Kashmiris justice, dignity, and right to self-determination. To conclude, let us pay tribute to the dead eyes of Kashmir, to the evidences buried in mass graves, to the half-widows who are still unaware of the fate of their spouses, to those fathers who shouldered the coffins of their sons, to those who are incarcerated and jailed and are determined to say no to Indian occupation and yes to right of self-determination, I thank you very much.